The morning after my wedding, before I even opened my eyes, I felt it. It wasn't romance. It wasn't the glow of something new and beautiful settling softly over me. It wasn't even nervousness about being a wife, about waking up beside a man for the first time in my life and figuring out what that meant. It was something quieter than all of those things, and heavier. It was pressure, not loud pressure, not dramatic, not the kind of pressure that announces itself and demands your attention. It was the other kind, the kind that simply sits in the room with you, patient and immovable, like a piece of furniture you have to arrange your entire life around. It was already there when I woke up. It was waiting for me before I'd even had my first thought of the day. Because in the Amish community, your wedding night is not only about what happens between a husband and wife in the privacy of their bedroom. That is part of it, yes. But the wedding night also marks the beginning of something else entirely. Something no one announces and no one explains, and yet somehow everyone understands. A countdown. Silent, communal, and absolute. And by the time you walk into church as a married woman for the very first time, your covering in place, your husband beside you, your new status visible to every person in that room, the people around you aren't only noticing that you are married now, they are already quietly beginning to count. People outside the community carry a picture of Amish weddings in their minds that looks nothing like the reality. They imagine something quaint and charming, a barn strung with lantern light, maybe, or a ceremony that feels like stepping back into a gentler time. What they don't imagine is how long the day actually is, and how little of it is about the two people getting married. The day begins before sunrise. You put on a simple dress. In most communities, it is a dress you made yourself, or that your mother or a sister helped you make. A plain fabric in a muted color, nothing ornate, nothing designed to draw the eye. You pin your hair carefully under your covering. You prepare yourself the way you have been preparing yourself your whole life, with modesty and quietness and an absence of anything that might look like vanity. Then you go to church. The service stretches for hours. The benches are hard, long, backless wooden benches that you have sat on since you were small enough to fall asleep on your mother's lap during the long sermons. The hymns are sung without instruments, voices rising and falling in the slow, ancient rhythm of the Ausbund, the same hymnal Amish communities have used for centuries. There is no organ. There is no piano. There are no musicians. Just the sound of a room full of people singing words that their grandparents sang and their grandparents before them. The preaching is long and serious. It focuses on obedience, on commitment, on humility, on the weight of a promise made before God and before the community. Marriage is not presented as romance in an Amish church service. It is presented as responsibility, as covenant, as the beginning of a life of service to God, to your spouse, to the children you will raise, to the community you belong to. You sit beside the man who has been your courtship partner, likely for many months, possibly for years. You have talked together. You have walked together on Sunday evenings. You may have ridden close beside each other in a buggy, but you have never truly been alone. Not really. Someone was always nearby. A sibling, a parent, the structure of the community itself. Always present, always watching, ensuring that nothing happened before it was supposed to happen. Everyone in that room knows that when the sun sets tonight, that changes. After the ceremony comes the meal. Long tables set up in a barn or a large home, covered with food that family and neighbors have been preparing for days. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, pies in every variety, loaves of homemade bread still warm from the oven, pickles and preserves and dishes that have been part of every community gathering within memory. The room hums with conversation. People move between tables, filling plates, refilling drinks, settling into the long, warm rhythm of communal eating that is one of the most genuinely beautiful things about Amish life. People smile at you differently now. The younger girls watch you with a particular kind of curiosity. the curiosity of someone looking at a door they haven't walked through yet. The older married women study you with expressions that contain something more complex. Knowledge, perhaps, recognition, the particular understanding of women who have stood exactly where you are standing and know what tonight holds. There are hugs, handshakes, quiet congratulations offered with warmth. No one says the word, no one makes a joke. Amish modesty runs far too deep for that. But the understanding hangs in the air of the room anyway, unspoken and understood by everyone present. The day has a second meaning beneath its official one, and every adult in that barn is aware of it. By the time evening falls and the guests begin to leave, your cheeks ache from holding a smile for so many hours. Your body is exhausted in a deep cellular way. Your mind is spinning from the sudden shift in identity that has happened to you today. You are no longer a daughter living under her parents' roof. You are no longer someone's girl. You are a wife. And whatever that means, and you know so little still about what that means, begins tonight. When you walk into your bedroom that night, you walk into a simple room. Plain wooden furniture, a handmade quilt folded at the foot of the bed, no decorations chosen to spark romance, no candles arranged for atmosphere, no music playing softly from somewhere, just a room and the two of you, and a silence that feels louder than the entire wedding day combined. The advice you received was minimal. Perhaps your mother said something brief that morning, or an older married friend caught your hand during the meal and offered a few words. Be patient, be kind, trust God. That was usually the extent of it. You know what is expected of you. You know it only in the broadest terms, the way you know something exists without knowing what it actually is. And then you are simply there. For the first time in your entire relationship, there is no one to interrupt. No parent in the next room, no siblings moving through the house, no community watching from just outside. Amish homes are full places, large families, open doors, the constant hum of shared life. Privacy is not something you are accustomed to. So standing in a quiet room with your husband and truly realizing that no one will come in, that this silence is yours, can feel almost disorienting. For many brides, the privacy itself is the most overwhelming part. What happens in that room is human. It is awkward, often, and emotional and private in the deepest sense of the word. It is not scandalous. It is not dramatic. People outside the community seem to expect some hidden secret behind the closed door, some mystery that will shock them when it's revealed. But there is no shocking secret. There are just two young people, both largely ignorant, both carrying the weight of a day that has changed everything, reaching toward each other in the dark and doing the best they can with what they have been given. What is truly intense about an Amish wedding night is not what happens in that room. It is what begins the next morning. I woke up on the morning after my wedding, and I felt it before I understood it. That pressure, that quiet, immovable weight. Because in Amish culture, marriage and parenthood are not two separate things that happen in sequence. They are understood as a single continuous movement, one flowing naturally and inevitably into the other. Children are viewed as blessings from God, unconditional, unplanned blessings that faithful couples receive with gratitude. Large families are not unusual. 8 or 9 children is common. Some families have more. The idea of intentionally preventing pregnancy is not a conversation most Amish communities have. In some communities, birth control is explicitly discouraged. In others, it is simply assumed, without discussion, without debate, that faithful couples will accept whatever children God chooses to give them. So once you are married, the expectation is already in place. You will begin a family. You will begin soon. No one announces this expectation. No one sits down with you and lays out the timeline. It does not need to be said out loud. It is woven into the culture the way water is woven into the ground. Invisible, everywhere, essential. The first Sunday you attend church as a married woman, everything feels different. Your covering may be slightly different now, reflecting your new status. You sit differently. You are greeted differently. The older women approach you with a warmth that has a specific texture to it. the warmth of people welcoming you into something they have already lived through, something they know the shape of in a way you do not yet. In their eyes, if you look carefully, you can sense something. Not cruelty, not judgment, just awareness. The clock has started. No one approaches you and demands news. That would be far too direct. Amish communities rarely confront personal matters bluntly. The culture moves through implication, through silence, through the accumulation of small signals that communicate volumes without ever stating anything plainly. Instead, the counting happens quietly, privately. In the minds of the women around you, in the brief exchanges between older wives, in the way people's eyes rest on you for just a half second longer than they used to when they ask how you are settling in. 3 months pass, 4, 5. If another young wife who married around the same time announces that she is expecting within her first few months of marriage, the community responds with visible joy. Her pregnancy becomes part of the shared conversation of the community. Baby blankets are started, names are guessed at. Meals are planned for when the baby comes. Her body's news is everyone's celebration. But if 6 months pass for you with no announcement, people begin to wonder. Not cruelly, not maliciously, at least not usually. Just with the quiet, persistent curiosity of a community that is accustomed to knowing everything about everyone within it. Comments float through gatherings, often not even directed at you specifically. I wonder when they'll have news. She's young, it will come. I had my first within the first year. God willing, it's the same for her. You hear them anyway. Amish communities are small. Everyone knows everyone. There are no secrets that last very long, and no conversations that stay entirely private. News moves faster than you expect it to, carried from home to home and gathering to gathering by the simple fact of people who care about each other deeply and therefore pay close attention to each other constantly. If a full year passes and you are still not pregnant, the curiosity deepens into something with more weight to it. People may begin gently asking how you are feeling. Others offer quiet advice, suggestions about prayer, about rest, about patience and faith. A few might mention herbal remedies passed down from grandmothers. You begin to feel, in a way that is difficult to describe precisely, that your body has become a topic of community interest. Not because anyone is being deliberately unkind, but because in a culture where everything is shared, the most intimate things are not exempt. And that is the strange and particular cruelty of this kind of pressure. It does not need to be loud to be powerful. It does not need to be spoken to be felt. It seeps into your quiet moments while you are washing dishes, while you are hanging laundry on the line in the early morning, while you are sitting beside your husband in church, listening to a sermon about the blessings of family. You begin doing math in your head, counting days, counting weeks, replaying timelines, wondering who else is calculating alongside you, wondering if the counting you feel from outside is something you are imagining or something that is genuinely there. It is genuinely there. Welcome back. My name is Sarah. I was Old Order Amish for the first 32 years of my life. A daughter, a wife, a mother, a woman who learned the rules by absorbing them from the air around her rather than by having anyone sit her down and explain them clearly. In part 1, I told you about the wedding day itself, about that first quiet night, and about the silent countdown that begins the very next morning. In part 2, I want to tell you what that countdown actually does to a young woman, what it feels like from the inside, and what I wish I had known, what I wish someone had told me before it all began. Think about being 19 years old. Think about standing at the very beginning of adulthood, still learning the shape of who you are, still discovering what you believe and what you value and what you want your life to look like. Think about how much is still unformed at 19, how much is still becoming. Now imagine that at 19, you are also responsible for running a complete household from scratch, cooking every meal from raw ingredients, managing the washing and the mending and the cleaning, supporting your husband in his work, maintaining your relationships with both families, navigating the expectations of an entire community that is paying quiet, consistent attention to you. and potentially soon, if God wills it, preparing to carry and birth and raise a child. There is very little space in that life for hesitation. There is not a widely accepted idea in Amish culture of simply enjoying being married for a while before the family begins. There is not a recognized phase of early marriage where a couple gets to breathe, to learn each other, to settle into their shared life before the next chapter begins. The culture moves forward quickly. Marriage flows into parenthood. That is the rhythm that almost everyone follows. And when your rhythm doesn't match that expected timeline, when the months pass and your body does not produce the announcement that everyone is quietly waiting for, it can feel deeply isolating. Because the isolation is private in a way that nothing else in Amish life is private. In most areas of Amish life, difficulty is shared. If your harvest fails, the community helps. If your husband is ill, the community brings food and offers labor. If you are grieving, the community surrounds you with presence. That is one of the most beautiful and genuine things about the life I came from, the way people show up for each other in hard times, the way no one is truly left to carry difficulty alone. But this particular difficulty is unspeakable. You cannot stand up in church and say that you are afraid something might be wrong. You cannot tell the women at the quilting bee that you lie awake at night wondering if your body is failing you. You cannot say any of it out loud because saying it out loud would mean naming something that exists in the realm of the body, of intimacy, of the bedroom, and that realm has no public language. It is the room where no one is supposed to look. So you carry it quietly, the way Amish women carry most of the hard things. If pregnancy does not come quickly, the self-doubt begins. You may not speak it out loud. You may not even acknowledge it fully to yourself because acknowledging it feels like opening a door you don't know how to close. But the questions are there anyway, running underneath everything, a current beneath the surface of your daily life. Is something wrong with me? Is God withholding a blessing? Is this a sign of something, of some failure in my faith, some insufficiency in my prayers? Some flaw in me that I cannot identify and therefore cannot fix? Am I already failing at the one role I have spent my entire life being prepared to fulfill? These questions do not announce themselves. They do not come in a rush all at once. They arrive quietly, one at a time, in the spaces between tasks, in the pause between putting away one dish and reaching for the next, in the moment before sleep comes, in the seat beside your husband on a hard church bench while someone preaches about the blessing of children and you feel the weight of the words landing differently on you than they land on the women around you who already have infants on their laps. Medical response to fertility concerns varies significantly between communities. Some Amish families are comfortable seeking out a doctor when there is a concern. Others rely on prayer and patience first and view turning to medicine quickly as evidence of insufficient faith. But regardless of which approach your community takes, the waiting is heavy. And because modesty is so deeply woven into everything, you rarely discuss these fears openly, even with the people closest to you. Admitting anxiety can feel like admitting doubt. And doubt in a culture built on faith is uncomfortable territory. You do not want to be the person whose faith wavered. You do not want to give the community another thing to quietly discuss. So you keep going, you keep showing up, you keep smiling in the right places and filling your plate at community meals and sewing baby blankets for other women's children with hands that do not tremble, even when you want them to. From the outside, Amish marriages look peaceful and steady. Outsiders romanticize them. They imagine simplicity, devotion, quiet love by lantern light, a life free from the anxieties of the modern world. What they don't see is how quickly girlhood ends. They don't see how completely a young bride's identity becomes tied to something she cannot fully control. They don't see how something that is, at its core, deeply personal, the functioning of a woman's body, the timing of conception, the geography of her own fertility, becomes woven so thoroughly into community expectation that it is impossible to separate one from the other. They don't see how an unspoken timeline can become as real and as heavy as any written rule. The invisible timeline works like this. From the day of your wedding, you have roughly a year before the absence of pregnancy stops being quietly noted and starts being quietly discussed. 1 year is generous by the standards of many communities. Some women feel the pressure begin as early as 3 months in. The younger you are, the more certain people are that it will happen quickly. Youth is conflated with fertility. Health is conflated with God's favor. And so every month that passes without an announcement carries with it a silent question, a question no one asks directly, that hangs in the air of every gathering you attend. When a bride finally announces that she is expecting, the shift in the room is visible, not just in her, though the relief in her is often visible too, but in the people around her. The quiet wondering dissolves, the counting stops. She has stepped fully into the role that everyone anticipated, and there is genuine joy in that moment. Real, warm, communal joy. But beneath that joy, there can also be exhaustion, because now the expectation shifts again. When will the second one come? In a culture where large families are not only normal, but considered evidence of blessing, the spacing between children tends to be short. Motherhood becomes a continuous journey, one chapter flowing into the next without significant pause. One baby leads to another, and the years blur together in diapers and feedings and pregnancies and recoveries and the quiet physical endurance required to sustain a body through all of it. The women I grew up around, women I loved and admired deeply, had worked this way their entire adult lives. Some of them seemed to carry it with genuine grace. Others carried it with something closer to resignation, not unhappy exactly, but not quite the picture that outsiders imagine when they romanticize Amish motherhood. Tired, capable, moving forward because forward is the only direction available. And it all began with that first quiet morning after the wedding, that first awareness of pressure, that first day of the countdown. I remember sitting at the kitchen table one early morning, several months after my wedding. The house was still. The sun was just beginning to come through the window, casting that particular early light that makes everything look clean and quiet. I had been awake for a while already. I was tracing patterns in the wood grain of the table with my finger, not thinking about anything in particular or thinking about everything at once in a way that amounted to the same thing. I was counting. I didn't realize I was doing it at first. But when I noticed, I also noticed that I had been doing it every morning for weeks, counting days, counting Sundays, counting how many church services had passed since the wedding, running calculations I had no control over, and wondering, with a certainty I couldn't have explained, who else was running the same calculations alongside me. No one had confronted me. No one had accused me of anything. No one had said a single unkind word directly to my face. But the expectation was woven so tightly into the fabric of the community that it didn't need to be spoken to be felt. It lived in the warmth of certain smiles, in the particular quality of certain questions, in the silences that followed those questions, in the way certain eyes moved to my midsection before they met my face. People ask me sometimes what is so shocking about Amish wedding nights. They expect some hidden dramatic revelation. They imagine mystery and scandal and secrets kept under lock and key for generations. But the real intensity of an Amish wedding night has nothing to do with what happens in that room. It is about what happens after. It is about being 19 years old and waking up the next morning to the quiet understanding that your worth in this community will now be measured in part by something you cannot fully control, that your body has become, in some sense, a community matter, that the most intimate experiences of your life are part of a larger rhythm that everyone around you is attuned to, whether or not anyone ever says so out loud. I am not telling you this to condemn the community I came from. I am telling you this because I know there are women, Amish women still inside those communities, and women who have left, and women from other cultures with their own versions of the same pressure, who have felt exactly this and have never once heard it named. The pressure I felt was real. The counting was real. The silence around all of it was real. And if you have ever felt the weight of a community's expectation pressed against your most private self, if you have ever done math in your head during a church service, calculating months, wondering who was watching, feeling your body become a subject of public interest without your permission, I want you to know that you are not imagining it, and you are not alone in it, and there is no shame in naming it, even if it took you years to find the words. Your body belongs to you. The timeline of your family belongs to you and your partner. Your worth is not measured in months or in pregnancies or in the speed with which you step into the role that everyone anticipated. I did not know how to believe any of that when I was 19, sitting at that kitchen table, tracing wood grain with my finger in the early morning quiet. I know it now, and I am telling you so that maybe you do not have to wait as long as I did to hear it. Here is the one thing I can tell you with certainty about the countdown. It stops. Not always when you want it to, not always in the way you want it to. Sometimes it stops because a pregnancy is announced and the community's attention moves, satisfied, to the next thing. Sometimes it stops because you grow strong enough or tired enough or far enough away from its reach that it simply loses its hold on you. Sometimes it stops because you leave and the distance makes you free. But it stops. And on the other side of it, there is something that looks like breathing, like being in your body without accounting for it, like waking up in the morning without the first thought in your head being a calculation. I know what that feels like now. I want that for you too. Leave me a comment. Tell me what you recognized. Tell me what surprised you. Tell me your own story if you're ready to share it. I read every single one, and I am grateful for every word. Subscribe if you want to keep following this story. We have covered the wedding night and the morning after. We are just beginning. Whether anyone says it out loud or not, everyone is counting, but you are allowed to stop. Sarah, former Old Order Amish.